Morning everyone. Sorry it's been a fair while since I've done another of these videos. I've been very busy of late. I've also been doing the setup, the prep for an entirely new video series that's going to be coming later in the year, but I've done all the basic prep I need to. And it's going to be a big series. Spoiler alert, but well, advance notice. I'm going to be covering a bunch of stuff from the Hammer Horror film series, the Dracula films, the Frankenstein films, the Mummy films, as well as the non-Dracula movies, the psychological dramas. Basically, looking at, I'm not going to look at all 61 Hammer movies, but I'm going to look at the majority of the ones I've certainly enjoyed, as well as a top 10 ranking, and go through them in just a ranking order and talking about them and trying to give as much of the unknown factual information as I can as well, because I discovered a whole bunch of stuff that I didn't know. So it might be useful information. It might be information that you find fun or useful or interesting. That was the word I was looking for. Interesting. Anyway, that nonsense out of the way. You can see the professionalism really hasn't returned to these videos. I want to carry on with this Bentley Little series. I've only done one book so far, and that was weeks ago. So I want to try and pick up the pace a little bit, get a couple of these out. So the book I've chosen today just so happens to be from the very same era as the last one. It's one that a couple of people I've already told my thoughts on, but I haven't made it public on YouTube. And that's The Mailman from 1991, I believe. It was Bentley Little's second novel, and the first of his novels really to focus on every aspect of what he does. I've mentioned that he does both social satire and creatures. And this has really both. The mailman himself is a representation of not just the postal service, but the effects that gossip and letters and other people's opinions can have in a small town, as well as the mailman himself being an entity and an embodiment of otherworldness and evil and things that are strange. And this is a particularly good early Bentley Little book. I think this is one of his very best early books, mainly due to the fact that the world building it does, even though it's only in a tiny section of Arizona, this white picketed fence community that live in this desert with very little around them, and their reliance on the external world and in particular the post to communicate with friends, family, receive important information from outside of the town. It's all very, very visual, and it works really, really well here. You get a sense of the heat of the place, a sense of the tension that comes later, the community spirit that seems to be all friendly initially, but then goes very wrong, as well as the just sheer otherworldliness of the mailman. The mailman in this story is described as this very pale, gaunt guy with ginger hair. Initially wouldn't seem remotely threatening, just rather, maybe even in today's society, the subject of mockery. But the fact that he never sweats when it's warm, which it is here, by the way, it's roasting still, and the fact that he's just very, very odd. As you go through, I won't spoil certain things about it, but as you go through, you discover this guy is not normal, and he starts to make and effectively manifest stuff that gives him a very otherworldly quality. Plus, he has some serious, whether it's hypnotic or powers of persuasion, he can get other people to either see, effectively not see what he's doing, or he can control what they're doing, etc. So he's a very disturbed individual. Anyway, we've got this family. There's the husband, the wife, and the young son. Again, the husband, effectively, in all Bentley Little books, is basically a version of Bentley Little. But his wife is a really likable female character. His son's a great character as well. There's the post office here, which the original postmaster dies, so they get a new replacement, which is this mailman who comes along. And initially, he's just sending out good news. They've had letters off family and friends they haven't seen them for ages, saying nice things. Some of them have got tax rebates. They just get really good positive news, and it's a pleasure to have the mailman around. But then slowly but surely, weird stuff starts happening. Like they start getting letters off people who are dead. They start getting messages that aren't really that are addressed to them, but they're not to them. They're about them, from neighbours complaining about something behind each other's backs. They start getting weird blackmail letters or photographs of them in the nude, which is impossible, but they've got them, with the threat that other people are going to receive these things, and it starts getting really dark and weird like that. And there doesn't seem to be any way to stop it because the mail service, well, it becomes an entity in itself, and then people start dying. So it's very hard to talk about the particulars without spoiling them in certain Bentley Log books. And this one in particular, I think the build-up, the pace, the structure of it is right there with some of his best stuff. Despite the fact this was only his second published novel, it's just a really... It's a novel where you can tell that somebody's really learnt their craft and know exactly what sort of story to tell. Even the ending here, which is something which especially later on becomes a bit... Yeah, is actually really good. The ending of this is solid and works. And I just thought that this whole story in general was tense, well told. It's creepy and it's weird. And the people here, they behave a little bit more like normal people. One of the other flaws I've mentioned about Ben Little books is that sometimes people just ignore stuff. And it does happen here to a certain extent. There's a bit in which the police here are trying to cover up this killing, which would have made state news because it's big. There's no way that would have gone undetected from the authorities, but they just try and cover it up as if not talking about it means it will go away. And it does only seem to be these three people that are fighting this. Everybody else sort of goes along with it or gets caught up in what's going on rather than looking at the bigger picture. But like I say, the characters are likeable, and I think you've got to accept with Bentley Little that surrealism is an element of his writing, and if you can deal with surrealism, you're going to love this. I mentioned in The Summoning that I'd be very surprised if it wasn't in my top 10 list when I finally do a ranking of all these. I'm going to do a very rapid fire ranking once I've rounded up all the stories. I would also be really surprised if this wasn't in the top 10 best Bentley Little books he's ever written. Only due to the fact that I just had such a good time with it. And it's got every single element of his writing that I love, with virtually none of the stuff I don't like about him. And even the things I can flaw and criticise, which there's always going to be stuff, I'm aware of how he writes and what he writes like, and he is quite limited in that sense. And it doesn't bother me because the good far outweighs the bad. So I'm not really going to be too spoilerific because there's only so much I can say without going into individual scenarios here. It's about a mailman who comes to a town, starts sending mail out, and things get weird. And it's just a lot better than that premise may sound. It's just a really simple idea, but one that works. It's got some really great visual scenes. It's dark, it's creepy, it's weird, it's otherworldly, and it's a great Bentley Little book. So that's going to do it really for this. I'm not sure what else I can say without spoiling the hell out of this thing. That is Bentley Little, the Mailman.